Hi, this is Dan Heisman, Philly tutor for Chess FM, and this is the Improve Your Chess video series for ICC members. In today's game, we're going to look at a game that was played recently in the London Chess Classic, not in the open section, of course. This is an amateur game, so it was played at a slow rate, but we don't have the time stamping, so ignore the time on the screen. All right, so white opens up with d4, and black plays an old Benoni c5. All right, so white has a couple choices here, but the main choice, since this is not a break move because you can move past it and keep it closed if you want to, that doesn't mean you should, but in this case it is the main move, is to play d5. Now white plays a move that's inferior and plays knight f3. And in order to explain why this is inferior, we're going to have to look at two other openings. We want to look at the English and we want to look at the Sicilian, strange as it may seem. All right, so let's say instead after d4, black had played knight f6 and white played c4, and now black plays c5, which is the more of the modern Benoni. The main move here again for white is to play d5 when black can play e6 with modern Benoni or b5 with Benko. But it's perfectly reasonable for white to also play knight f3 here, because if black takes the pawn and white takes back, white has a perfectly good game. If black tries to attack the knight, black has weaknesses on the d5 and d6 square. In fact, there's a fun trap here. If black plays d5, c takes d5, knight takes d5, white can play queen takes d5, and black loses a piece because queen takes d5, knight c7 check, gets back the queen with interest. All right, so this is perfectly okay for white, and that means in this position, white can play knight f3. Now we could reach this position from the English as well. Let's say we have a symmetric English, c4, c5, knight f3, knight f6, white can play d4. And of course, black has the option of taking here, and we get back to the same position we just did, which is, as I said, perfectly okay for white. All right, now let's look at a Sicilian. In a Sicilian, in open Sicilians, white purposely plays d4 and allows this trade. Pawn takes, knight takes. But again, black can't play d5 easily. I believe the computer refutation here is to play bishop here, and now bishop d2 doesn't work because you lose the d pawn. So black has some problems in this position. And if black plays the Lowenthal, of course, white can play here and go after these weak squares again. So, you know, d4 is a perfectly good move here. Now, let's contrast what we just saw with the English and the Sicilian with what happens in this game. Black plays c5, and now white plays knight f3. And this is inferior. Why? Because now, without a pawn on c4 or e4, like in the English or in the Sicilian, after pawn takes, knight takes, black could play something like d5 right away. And already we can see he's threatening to dominate the center with e5, and black has at least equality, if not more already, with the better pawn center. So this is a major difference. This is one reason why it's good to understand the ideas behind various openings, because if you understood the Sicilian, you understood the English there, you should also understand why the same idea of playing knight f3 here doesn't really make as much sense. It's not quite the same thing, and the differences all favor black. So therefore, knight f3 not a good move here. In the old Benoni, as I said, the main move is to play d5. It's not the only move, but you know, knight f3 is just kind of seating the center. Here, black purely gets to trade a side pawn for a center pawn and dominate the center. So black does take the pawn in the game.